Hey y'all, this video is a lecture on the current topics in health and kind of why it's important. So, this particular course is all about the current topics in health. And so, what this lecture is going to do is just kind of discuss why it's important for us to know about the current topics in health, and really more so, how do we take the current things that are happening in health and how do we start seeing what's coming down the pipeline of what will be current in the near future? So, almost predicting the future in a way, because that becomes almost more important. What's currently going on in health is great, and we want to be able to deal with that and understand what's going on and be a part. But being able to see what is going to be a current topic or a current trend in health is more important from a career perspective, because if you can learn to not really predict the future, but predict the future on what's going to be a big deal. Um, you can gather resources, you can put manpower in place, and you can really work your way up as a leader in the industry because you're able to be ahead of the curve and take advantage, whether that's in a care perspective or monetary perspective or um, just just being on top of things and being ready to handle something. Um, and so that's the idea behind kind of the way this course is approached. You guys are looking at kind of these micro trends, these things that are small subsets of people, in order to be able to look at what may be coming down the pipeline. So when it comes to it, and we look at health topics, when we look at current trends in health, um, current topics are very related, and then things in health are a little bit different. And so you have to take both into account. Realize health ranges from old to present to future. So there are things that we have that are in health that are hundreds of years old that people do or we know is right, and people still kind of get behind. There are present things that may not have been all that current a few years ago, but now they're big topic issues. And then you've got things that are coming into the future. And so when you look at this, it makes health a little bit harder for us to really focus in on when it can span all of these years. So future, when we're talking about health, could be looking at currently taking your DNA and be able to tailor medicine based on your DNA and the genes that you have. Present medicine, um, you're looking at things like you're seeing a resurgence in non pharmaceutical type treatments. So things that are helpful, things like maybe exercise or your diet, or even things like your sleeping habits that regulate your circadian rhythm, being a current topic or something in the near future. And then we have old ways of sanitation and vaccines and medications, and things that even go back to Eastern medicine of treating with different herbs. And so you can see how things are kind of flowing and connected. Um, and so the big thing is it's important for us to be able to identify the trends now, which usually is pretty easy for us to look at the current things that are going on in health. But we're trying to take it just a little bit further and see the things that are coming down the pipeline, the things that are happening on a small scale, but there's a chance and a good likelihood that those will become the big trends of the near future, that you can capitalize on or take advantage of or just be ready for as it comes. And so this can be from a variety of different perspectives, from PT/OT route to working in a hospital to nutrition and exercise, or whatever that may be, trying to see what is going on. And so as we go with that, we do need to understand what is dictating change. What are the things that are driving um, the these changes in the current trends, the things that are going to kind of force things to be different than what they currently are. And there's lots of things that cause this. And this list isn't extensive, and other things come into play with this, but most things tend to be wrapped up in technology will dictate change. If you can see technology coming down the pipeline, we can we can see what the current trends will be in the near future and what they currently are. Um, Part of this would be wearable technologies that are able to detect heart rate and exercise. If you were able to see that coming down and the resurgence that was going to have, to force people to exercise and be aware of the things that were going on, you could take advantage and make apps for that, or similar type things, or seeing it in a hospital of a more personal way to get more information on people. Um, Globalization is one that dictates change. So the fact that we are connected globally today, the fact that information can go around the world in um, literally a second or two. Someone across the world can have the same information we do. It doesn't take days, months, weeks, even years the way it used to. And that also makes us more connected. Not only is the information there, but we're more connected and can interact and see those things and the way we interact with those people. One thing we'll look at this semester is laws. Laws can definitely dictate change. When laws are created that either restrict or encourage a certain behavior, or a certain piece of equipment, or a certain thing to be done, that is going to drive that. And so part of what you're going to do this semester is you're actually going to dig down into bills, which are pieces of legislation that may become laws, and looking at those and determining how can this bill, if it becomes a law, how can that affect whatever industry I'm looking at, and how could I be ready to take advantage of that. Because typically with laws, there are lots of funding that go in with those as well. So if you're on the cusp of bills that are about to become laws, you can be in a place where you can take advantage of this monetarily by getting funding for your particular facility, or for a research project, or being able to take out, maybe if you're the first to implement it, you can get some new equipment for free that other people have to pay for if they're not on that edge of the change that's going on. New standards, so just new standards in the way things are done. So this could be the way people are talking to each other. It could be new standards in the way things are done. So DNA testing being one of those. It's just a new standard of looking for these things for cancer patients, looking at their DNA to see if they're more at risk. Competition, so if people are competing for a product, that could be a place that you don't want to be, or if you see competition coming down, that's going to dictate change because you're trying to stay ahead of them. Population or people growth is going to dictate change, because as there are more people, things have to be treated slightly differently. Realize when we talk about people growth, that doesn't necessarily mean population change as in the way of there are more people being born, but people growth in the fact of people are moving into that area, or people are growing in their mindsets. Maybe their mindsets are changing, so they're growing to think a different way, and they have to be reached a different way as it comes to our health. And then finally, war and terrorism also play a role in this. This can be seen with 9/11, but also other things that have occurred. And so that is another thing that can dictate change. And so these are things you're always going to want to consider and look at to help you figure out what are the current trends, and then where are they headed. And so part of what this course looks at is this thing called a microtrend. And a microtrend is a small group of people, usually less than 1 million people, kind of when it's identified, but a small group of people that have a current way of doing things, or a current look at things, that based on other factors we can see is probably going to grow into a bigger trend to become the bigger issue, the big thing. So getting on a microtrend, learning what those are, and kind of getting on board with a microtrend and learning ways to help those people. If it does become this bigger trend, they don't always, but if they do become that bigger trend, you're in a spot to capitalize on that or help that. And so when you're looking at this, yeah, it is kind of a business mindset, but it's also in a way to be able to help people. One of the examples for that is with COVID-19. When that hit, people that were able to see that telecommunications and video conferences were coming down the pipeline, because before COVID-19, there was a growing of this. Now COVID-19 made that market explode of teleconferencing and video conferencing. Well, anyone who is already kind of using that and familiar with it was able to capitalize on that more and being able to assist people. And so one example of that would be a personal trainer I knew was already doing video sessions, helping people that they knew in different states that had moved. And so when COVID-19 hit, they were very seamlessly able to transition their business model over and keep people healthy. They didn't have to worry about people kind of getting out of shape or getting injured. And so this person works with athletes, but they also work with high risk populations like kids with cerebral palsy. And it would be detrimental for these guys not to have been exercising for weeks at a time. And so they were able to capitalize that on a business perspective and in a health perspective. And so, ways to identify microtrends is the bounce back from chaos. So, when there is chaos like COVID-19 or wars or things like that, what we know there's going to be this reaction initially, and then people are going to come back to more of a normal. But what's in that transition period, and where are they going to land? And so, you really have to start being able to anticipate that change coming. Is the way it's going to be. And it is a gamble. You're not always correct, but anticipating that change and looking at things from multiple perspectives can make you really successful at seeing what is the current trend now and where is that headed. There's also change that is due to sheer size, the limitations of certain things because of their size. And one of the things I definitely want to mention is the fact that you can look at certain states to start being a dictator of this change. There are states in the United States that tend to lead the way when it comes to where people are headed. And so we're going to look at a few of the top states that kind of lead the way. And there are multiple things that have happened in these states over the last 10, 20 years where they're leading the country in initiating this change, initiating these new trends to occur. And they may be even mainstream now, and this is where they kind of started, or were the first place that people were changing their ideas. And they're really, when you look at these states, they give across all of these states, they give a good representation of the population at large. And so the first state that tends to be kind of a trend-setting state, or a state that you can look at what's going on there and be able to see what's going on going to happen maybe in a bigger scale. The first one are states like Washington. Okay, so Washington State, we tend to see as they start to do things, they tend to lead the way in other places. Realize Starbucks came from Washington. That's where it started, and that's where their headquarters is. And Starbucks started there and then kind of grew across the nation. And then Starbucks there for a while was a way to predict what areas were going to have a population boom and be kind of where people wanted to be. In their initial stages, where a Starbucks would pop up shortly thereafter, you would see this increase in people moving to that area. Not because the Starbucks were there, but because they had a model that was identifying what would be a successful business for them, and it led to this. It was the same places where this growth was occurring. Amazon is housed in Washington, and so you can kind of see that this is a good place to kind of look at the news. So when it comes to trying to predict and see the current topics in health and where they're headed, it's not a bad idea to go to the state papers of Washington or some of these other states that we mentioned and see what's going on there and keep track of what's going on in those states with legislation to see where we're headed. The next state is Colorado is a big state. So Colorado was the first state to legalize the recreational use of marijuana. This definitely affects health in many ways. And so if you saw that coming down the pipeline, and yes, marijuana is not legal everywhere, but you're seeing more and more states allow that. Colorado kind of led that way, and then Washington wasn't far behind that either. And so we can start to see what's coming down, and you can make preparations. A lot of people in the health world right now, with the legalization of marijuana, are preparing for a number of years from now to have higher rates of lung cancer or just cancers in general, because they definitely can lead to that with high consumption. But in addition to that, we're starting to have to be ready to deal with higher rates of depression and anxiety that come along with that. And so that's there. And then other people are taking that as a business model, using that for health purposes. And so don't care where you stand on marijuana, there are benefits to almost everything that is out there, drug related or naturally related. and it's about how is it being taken in and what are the levels. And so there are multiple ways on health that you can look at things like marijuana, but Colorado was kind of leading that way where people could do with it as they felt. And so if you can be on top of a trend like that, you can take advantage from multiple spots, whether that is taking care of the side effects from it or using that as a treatment. But again, always do your research to make sure what you're preparing for isn't just about making money, but it's also about helping people, and that's what health sciences is. Um, and sometimes we can't see that until retrospect, but you have to do your best. And these are places where we can start looking at Colorado early. Another way, they legalize marijuana. We can start looking at Colorado and what's happening health wise, because eventually that's going to happen in other states as well that legalize this for recreational use, or anyone can use it. Um, Another state we have is Florida. Florida actually is a good state for predicting kind of the future and seeing what's happening. One thing is Florida is they kind of go back and forth politically, but also just in every aspect. They kind of go back and forth, and so typically, if something takes a hold in Florida, it will tend to be something that's going to happen in the rest of the United States. A lot of people in Florida do move to multiple states. So that, or they may live in multiple states at different times of year, and so they're taking those concepts and ideas and the things they have to other states to help spread those. Um, Florida is typically considered a little bit older, but older people have a lot of power and have a lot of money to influence change in other places as well. And so you're seeing how there's a lot of things to consider when it looks at current trends and where those are headed. Uh, Again, remembering that current trends are great to know, but if we can't see kind of where those current trends are headed, they don't do us a lot of good. If you are always just trying to figure out what is current now and trying to jump on that, by the time you actually kind of get on board with what's currently going on, the way things move now, how quickly they move, you're going to be behind the game. And so we want to be able to look at what's currently going on, look at what's happened in the past, and be able to see what in the near future is going to happen, because that's going to help you help people with their health more. Um, it's going to help you prepare them for what's coming down so that they can be healthier, but it's also going to allow you, again, to make better business moves. And many of you are going to be affecting people's health, and you're going to be somewhat running a business. Just about everyone in the health science world is doing a combination of those two. There's very few people I know, and I know all across the spectrum, where they're not having to worry about a business aspect and a health aspect. And sometimes those pull in opposite directions, and so you have to realize the hurt on one or the other to be able to make the best decision for those people's health and your business. So one of the last states that we'll talk about is the state of Ohio. Ohio is a big state, and it's a very middle of the line state. It's pretty evenly split across multiple things from age and gender and political affiliation. It's a very diverse but a good representation of the United States. And so typically, as things happen in Ohio, you start to see those going everywhere because it's starting to reach a majority of the population. If something occurs in Ohio, because it's a good representation of the United States, it means that a high percentage of people across the nation would be willing to kind of go on that same route or accept that or do whatever it is. And so Ohio's good, and it's a big state in elections as well. And so you're starting to see how all of these things are tied together. And so with this particular lecture, we're done. And so I really want you guys, as you start to read the book assigned for this class and do the discussion post, keep these things in mind of why it's important for us to look at things in news, why it's important for us to look at things in as bills and laws that are coming down the pipeline, and then why we're trying to see the things that are small, these micro trends, and see kind of where they're headed for us to be able to look at what is currently happening and what may be happening in the future so that we can affect health and a business and the ethics of it, right? Because that's part of it. You guys are going to have a voice in what is going to happen later on. And so if you can see what's coming down the pipeline, you can be prepared to either defend it and say, yes, this should happen, or go against it and say, maybe this shouldn't, because it's not best for health and it's not best for the end goal of what all of you want, which is to to do well, but also to assist people. So keep all these in mind as you start to look at the book Microtrends. And I hope you guys have a great semester. And like I said, continue to touch back on this particular PowerPoint and let me know if you guys have any questions.